Hello ladies and gents, it's EZScape, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about debug modes. In video games, a debug mode is an interface which allows the user to control certain aspects of the game state as a method of finding bugs. The debug mode isn't normally supposed to be accessed by players, only developers, which is the reason why gaining access to them usually requires a series of seemingly random inputs. And even if you do manage to gain access to the debug mode, it's going to take a while to figure out how to use it because it isn't always going to be intuitive, and only the game's programmers will know exactly how it works. But let's say you do figure out the Konami code random set of input instructions and you figure out how to work the controls. Then what do? Well, the whole reason why the debug mode is so interesting is because you've essentially just activated a cheat code, which depending on the game can have a series of side effects. In the Harry Potter games, you see a lot of debug options which are essentially cheat codes. These debug options will allow you to warp to different locations, give you a level select, and they'll lock just about anything. Sonic Mania also features a debug mode, but it only allows for level select. There are many more examples I could share, but for now, let's talk about some of the recent findings. On March 2nd, 2018, the debug mode for Jak and Daxter was found by the Jak and Daxter community, almost 17 years after its release. And as of a few days ago, the debug mode in Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door was also discovered 13 years after its release by PistonMiner. To start off, let's talk about Paper Mario. While PistonMiner was working on enabling crash reports for his modding toolkit for the Thousand-Year Door, he noticed that one of the references to the crash handler function was featured in code for the title screen, and in it contained a series of button checks. After he tested the button inputs on the title screen, it confirmed that this was in fact the buttons to reach the debug mode, which is XBRBYL. As for what can actually be accomplished while the debug mode is activated, pressing the Z button will show the date the game was built, and crash reports will also be displayed if the game does happen to crash. Keep in mind that these inputs will only work on the title screen, and reopening the title screen will disable it. While this may seem pretty lackluster in comparison to the debug mode tricks I was talking about earlier, this is still an amazing discovery, which only took 13 years to find. Also, enabling the debug mode during speedruns has been made allowed because it doesn't give any advantages during runs. And since the game has been known to crash a little, crash reports being enabled is great because being able to know why the game crashes in certain areas means that routing changes can be made to avoid them. New stuff is being discovered all the time in the Paper Mario games, so maybe in the future other debug options might be able to be found that include new features. If the Paper Mario debug options weren't action-packed enough to your likings, then let's shift over to Jak and Daxter. The discovery of the debug mode that was made back in March of this year wasn't actually the first time anyone has ever known that an accessible debug mode had existed. On October 26, 2017, YouTuber Donkey Planet discovered a debug mode in the Jak and Daxter The Precursor Legacy demo by using the method found by Luminar, who is a researcher of Jak and Daxter games. This debug mode was fascinating, included several different features including being able to fly around and a free camera. Unfortunately though, only a limited debug mode was able to be found in the full versions of the games with the same method. This limited debug mode barely included any features, which didn't make it very useful or interesting. Nobody decided to look further into it right away because they thought that the rest of the features were simply removed. However, on February 11, 2018, Luminar found a random address in the memory of Jak 1 that when set to a specific value, gave a bunch of random inputs into the game and eventually activated the full debug mode. The next day he discovered a function existed which could control the debug mode. It had three different options: off, on, and limited. And with the use of a memory editor, Luminar could now simply turn debug mode on or off manually in all of the Jak games. But how could we actually do this on a console? Well, with the help of I'm Just a Tester, they tracked down the button presses from the memory address I was talking about earlier. The only problem was they didn't know exactly what the combination was, only that they knew which buttons were used and the length of the combinations. After sharing this information with members of the community, within a half hour, community members Kuatar and Vaser figured out the combination to unlocking the full debug mode on console for the entire Jak trilogy. So what exactly can you do with this debug mode? Well, for starters, you can fly around just about anywhere, and if you hold R2, you can ascend endlessly. There's a free camera mode which allows you to move around the entire game. Some other options include unlocking all warp locations, spawning zoomers, and a combination to give 1,000 skull gems, 1,000 precursor orbs, all guns, the jet board, and it will refill all ammo as well as eco. The entire list of button combinations is featured on the Jak and Daxter technical wiki, which you can find in the description of this video. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like because it's the easiest way to show support. Huge thanks to PistonMiner and Luminar for not only discovering these debug modes, but for helping me with all of the information in this video. Also, thanks to BoomerStreams for help, as well as providing lots of debug footage. I thought these discoveries were really cool, and I always look forward to new discoveries in older video games. Well guys, that's all I have to say, so goodbye, and as always, I hope you have a beautiful life.